I think we get paid based on accountability. Like the client, if the client messes up, that shouldn't cost us. If we mess up, it shouldn't cost the client. It should all be a learning process because there's a lot of things to figure out. And clients don't want to do it on their own. They don't trust their own people.
Welcome to the Digital Agency Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Englander.
So today on the show, I'm very excited to welcome back Carl Smith, because I think we talked years ago, or maybe I was on your show. I think like 2017, 18 or something. But anyway.
Don't call it a comeback. I've never been anywhere.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I'm going to give the official bio. So Carl Smith is a community builder and philosophical futurist, which we're going to definitely dig into, whose purpose is helping agency leaders connect, grow, and thrive. As the leader of the Bureau, Carl has hosted and attended over 500 workshops, webinars, conference talks, and masterminds, earning himself a front row seat to the evolving playbook of agency leadership. His understanding of the shifting dynamics in creative and digital services and his passion for authentic connections and human-focused leadership make him a trusted voice in the industry. Carl, welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for reading that. Every time I hear it, I'm like, okay.
There's never been one time.
Your own bio. It's so hard. Right. But I had a friend write it, so that felt better.
At least you can blame that person if you don't like it, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. My first question is, what do you consider to be philosophical futurism? What does that mean to you?
It's very much about not ignoring what's coming, but also not treating it as some terrifying thing. Like, let's realize that the great philosophers, right? Like, you can look, I'll go Marcus Aurelius. Like, if we look at the Stoics and their philosophy of, okay, right? It's like, okay, so that came, what are we going to do? It's very much about just realizing there can be good in everything. And we just need to realize the world is changing. And so for me personally, a philosophical futurist is not only fun to say, but it basically means I'm putting my chips in different places to say, this is where I think we're going. And this is how I think we should behave when we get there.
Yeah, that's interesting. And there's so many places we could go with that. It's funny. It kind of reminds me of like, I consider myself kind of like a loose technological empiricist, which is kind of tied to that, which is like, the long story short, like technology is the horse that pulls the cart of resources, or the economy, which pulls the cart of the culture, which pulls the cart of politics, which is downstream of culture, right?
Oh, I like that.
And it's like, it is never that simple, because you could have reflexive effects that bounce one off the other, but in the grand scheme of things, that's how it works. And then I guess the furthest upstream would be like scientific breakthrough. So we're going to probably go pretty far off the reservation here, but like I think you're into history and philosophy and stuff. I am a dabbler, and it seems like we've gotten these giant breakthroughs like between 1880 and 1920, where we have air conditioning and electricity and all this cool stuff. Then we got, this basically the phone and digital communications. And I'm trying, and to me, it seems like we're still trying to figure out what's next, and whether if that thing is AI, or if it's going to take a long.
It's so funny when you hold this up, because what I think right away is it was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I like it. And I love that you mentioned like that time period, like 1901 World's Fair, when they first introduced electricity. How dope is that? And everybody said it was a useless technology because steam was great.
Right. And we got so many of the things that kind of make our modern worlds and make us not in the Stone Age, like in this really short period of time. And I guess the question is like, are we right to expect more of that? Or like, it's sort of this balance between open-ended optimism with like a certain amount of realism. Like, can we still expect to keep getting more, or should we be okay with, with this idea that, hey, maybe that was just an aberration. Maybe that doesn't happen every time. So anyway, it's a ginormous question for you, but I'll bounce it back.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're going to have advances that move faster than we ever expected. I think a majority of them are going to be good. A lot of them aren't going to be great. And those that aren't good could undermine all the other stuff, right? We don't know, but I really do think we're going into a hyper advanced evolution of technology. And they're going to be naysayers, and there should be. If ChatGPT were an employee, it would get fired on day one, right?
Right.
It's moody, it lies a lot. We can call them hallucinations. They're lies, right? It's like we're being so nice. Oh, it's my sick friend, ChatGPT. Look at him trying. But I think everything we do, from how we live to our personal health to work to our relationships, I mean, I think these advancements have an opportunity to make everything better. And I am stupidly optimistic, and sometimes it's more on the stupid side than the optimistic, but um, I, I really think it's going to be what we make of it. And obviously we'll have some bad actors. I mean, that's just going to happen.
Yeah,
So,
that makes sense. And I really want to dig into examples of these bright spots that you're seeing with the agencies that you're working with and the recent events. Before we do that, because a lot of people or some people might not know the Bureau, can you talk about it a little bit? How did you go about starting it? What was it like? I believe it was 2012, if I have my facts right. What did it look like back then?
so in 2012, Greg Story and Greg Hoy actually started the Bureau. And so they were both running different offices of Happy Cog. And they had challenges because they were going to merge them and they didn't know how to do it. So they thought, let's get a bunch of agency owners together. And back then we were web shops, right? We didn't like the term agency. We left agencies to start these, but then we fell into a lot of their patterns. But so anyway, they basically reached out to 24 owners and said, if you will get yourself to the Kennedy School at Portland, Oregon, we'll take care of the rest. And we just want to talk for a few days about how this works. Because they weren't, I mean, if you look at the origin of almost all shop owners, agency owners, especially digital, we were creatives, we were musicians, we were writers. I was an actor. So we got drawn into this new medium as craftspeople. We didn't know business, right? There was so much work and so much cash flow. We didn't know what we were doing wrong, right? We just went. So they got us all together. And the first thing we did was we took an oath. And this is still the cornerstone of the Bureau today. I promise not to share anything that a reasonable person would deem sensitive or confidential that gets shared during our time together, right? It's a verbal non-disclosure agreement, but it holds water for us. And from that first event, I still have some of my best friends today were at that event, right? Gabe Levine from Matchstick Legal was there. If you ever saw the F You Pay Me video, he was a lawyer. Mike Montero, who was in that video, was in that room. Kelly Goto, who wrote the first book, Web Redesign, Workflow That Works. Like it was a powerhouse of a room. And by the end of it, we did not want to leave. So we were supposed to get together a year later. We made it 7 months. People wanted stuff for their PMs, for their number twos, for their operations folks, for all this stuff. So it started growing. And then we started doing more events. In 2014, they asked me if I wanted to be a partner, because I just came to all of it and I had my shop EngineWorks running kind of on its own. But I think the core is just people were so alone. And I didn't know what a mastermind was. I probably didn't hear that term until like 2015 or so, but I think we had some elements of that. We were kind of the hall conversations at a conference. We just didn't have the conference, right? And today, we've had over 30,000 people who have come through events or been members. We have 1,400 active members. And every day there's a Slack channel that's a bunch of back channels and speakeasies and secret handshakes. Like nobody knows all of the channels but me. But there are thousands of messages a week that go through there with people helping each other. And it's the same thing with our events. We're just trying to help each other be better at what we do. And one thing that it's given me, you mentioned the 500 workshops and webinars and all that kind of stuff. It's given me this insight into where everybody is. I don't run an agency anymore. This is my full-time gig. And it's a lot. It's a beast. But there's just so much support that comes out of it that I don't know how to do anything else now, because I'm addicted to watching people help each other, especially in this world. You know, it just opens up to a whole nother level of carrying people that you care about forward.
Yeah, that's great. And like one thing I kind of picked up on is it sounds like we take for granted this idea of whatever you want to call it, a community, a mastermind group. But back then it was kind of innovational. It sounds like this idea of like sharing these insights.
Yeah.
And now we're just like, oh, this is just a thing that exists. Like in every industry, there's these groups. Do you see anything like that starting to bloom now? Are there any like kind of new innovations in community building or sharing ideas that are interesting to you based on where you started back in 2012?
I think it's still the core, the core tenets of community. And I have studied community a fair amount. You study the Catholic Church, you study the Boy Scouts, you study Alcoholics Anonymous. These are communities, and you start to find that there are these, I call them rings, but you have people who just watch, and then people who participate, and then people who want to lead, and then people who want to organize. And so there's got to be this opportunity to move higher and higher within the organization. But the other thing is, there has to be a sense of appreciation. There have to be little tokens that mean something. If it's a, something in the Catholic Church, I don't go, but I'm sure there are these. I know in Boy Scouts, it's your merit badge, right? That thing costs maybe $2, maybe, but it means everything. In AA, it's getting your chip because you've been sober for 2 years, right? And so these little tokens connect us together. And it's also this aspect of, I want to give as well as receive. And so that's when you truly have community, right? A lot of times I think a brand group, like a product puts together customers and calls it a community, but really it's a one-way dialogue. Maybe those folks are talking to each other, but once you get into true community, it's everybody raising their hand, wanting to either lead or support, or they have a question. And when they send that out, it gives everybody a sense of purpose, because we all have a common goal, which is to keep doing what we're doing, right? To keep the dream alive that we can be self-sufficient and we can be creators and we can use this cool technology to do stuff. So I think that's kind of the core of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I love that you kind of tied that back to these timeless institutions and just like looking at them and like what makes them different, what have they done right, and what can you maybe channel there. Kind of related to this, there's a community I'm in that I've loved. It was kind of my first foray in entrepreneurship was with Dynamite Circle, if you know them by chance. And for years they were almost kind of like the piratey location independent entrepreneurs group. So like it was like, the guys that would fly off to Thailand and start e-commerce businesses, digital nomads. And before 2020, that was like considered, it was weirder. It was like a little bit more off kilter than it is now. Then it started changing, and then COVID accelerated everything. And they've done a good job still retaining that, but evolving. To hopefully bring this to a question that makes sense, I'd love to hear, like, how has the Bureau sort of evolved with the way agencies have changed? How have you seen the organization change, if that makes sense, based on the macro?
No, it does. I think agencies have made a lot of decisions over the past 10 years, right? Even coming into the pandemic, we had changes in the way that the world worked. Then we come into the pandemic and that changes things. Then we come into AI and that changes things. While we're just getting our feet back under us from the pandemic, suddenly everything that we build and how we do things just all changes. So I would say one common thing across most people in the community is they're exhausted. They're tired. The game keeps changing so much. But we're really probably 3 or 4 communities. Because, I mean, you can look at the size of the shop, and that's obviously a thing. And we've got a whole lot of solopreneurs. They actually have their first call this Friday. They were like, why aren't we having a call? So the solopreneurs are getting together to try to lift each other up. And we've got shops over 1,500 people. Yeah, they each have different needs. They each have different capabilities. But you also have based on what is their output. Are they a search firm? Are they a marketing firm? Are they a branding firm? Are they a generalist? So you have pockets like that, but I think the real shift is who is all in on AI, who is stuck in the messy middle and not sure what they want to do, and who just has their head in the sand, right? And so I think in that way, while I'm attending a webinar that's being put on, I don't actually put them on anymore because the community does, right? So like I was saying with giving people opportunity to do more and more, we now have a group called the ambassadors, and the bureau ambassadors, they put on the events and they host and stuff. So I'm watching that, and you can see based on the questions, right? Some people are still, again, way behind, and some people are way ahead, and some people are right in the middle. But that's kind of what I see. I don't try to look at it as what they create. I don't try to look at it as where they are in their life cycle, although that's also really important. I really look at it as how open are they to change and how capable are they of adapting? Because it's coming, and a lot of folks I'm worried are going to get hurt because they didn't move, because they thought that, they're still operating with a pandemic leadership mindset instead of an evolving AI leadership mindset.
Yeah.
And those two things don't work together.
Yeah, that I want to definitely get into AI as we always will lately. One thing you mentioned, and I think you've also have a post on this, is that there's this epidemic of apathy among agency owners.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit? What's behind that, and where are the sunny spots, and where are the agencies that are getting through that? What's getting them through it?
I just came back from Leadership Love, and it is called Leadership Love, people. It was originally Leadership Live. There are 6 other events called Leadership Live. I'm not that clever, evidently. But this event was really helping us break out of apathy in a lot of ways. I think what's going on is the game has changed so fast, and everything that works one week seems not to quite work as well the next week. And what happens is eventually you just don't care. You're like, I'm going to do the bare minimum. We had that crisis of quiet quitting, I think it was called. I think leadership's doing that now. I think we're just at this point where talent is so expensive, we have to lay everybody off. Talent is so cheap. So now you've got all these ebbs and flows. Clients won't give us anything. Clients are coming off the sidelines. And you never know from month to month, like what is staring you in the face. So I think eventually there's no analysis paralysis. It's just exhaustion. And so you just do what you have to do. And then put on top of that, and I don't want to get political, but you put on top of that kind of what's going on in the world. And you really start to wonder, does it matter? Does it really matter what we do? And so, what I always tell people, I'm on so many calls every week with owners. And one of the things I always lean into is it's about you and your people, the people in your family, the people in your community, the people in your company. You have to look at the people that they rely on you. And you have to let that be your fuel, right? You have to let that kick you in the ass and get you moving, because there are paths forward. It's just not the same path for an extended period of time like we're used to. And I'll say, there are a lot of people who started running shops when I did back in the early 2000s, some back in the late 90s. And we didn't know that was easy mode. We were playing the game on easy mode. There was so much money. There was so much mystery around what we did. There was magic, right? And people would pay a premium for magic. And we burned through cash. We didn't know how to run a business. We didn't know what utilization meant. But now we have to be business people. And on top of that, we feel like, and I'm not sure it's true, we have to sacrifice creativity and fit into this concept of best practices. Best practices evolve because you change shit. They change, you have to keep moving or you don't see what is best. But so many of us have just fallen in line and we're just moving forward. I mean, how many hero images can you see? Right? How many little graphs, how many little Gantt charts, whatever. Oh man, sorry, I'm getting motivated.
No, this is interesting. And I have a tendency to kind of go off the reservation with stuff, but I think what's interesting about it is like what I've noticed from talking with lots of agency owners over the years, and myself, honestly, we're always going to be projecting, creating content, is that what people have wanted has changed a lot. When I used to talk with agencies about us helping with their biz dev or lead gen, what do you want? Everyone used to want bigger headcount, growth, scale. Now it's a lot more, people won't use the word lifestyle, but it's something along those lines, like autonomy, leanness. And then there's still people that want growth and scale, but it's a lot more schizophrenic. I think it seems like there's a lot more bewilderment around what they should want, the kind of like mimetic model of what successful entrepreneurship is. And it always was kind of like chaotic, right? Because like entrepreneurship, it's not like a game like being a tennis champion or something. Like you can always make it your own, but now it's like even more chaotic. It's like, do I want to build a giant company? Do I want to have a one-person shop and just chill? And like, so I don't have a great question. How does that resonate with you, and how does that kind of
Yeah, no,
you're seeing? Yeah.
I think it goes back to Daniel Pink with Drive and him dusting off research from the 60s and saying what people want is autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And I think mastery is still there, but the sense of autonomy and purpose has faded. We don't feel like we're able to do whatever we want. And not just employees, but I'd say leadership too. We're kind of handcuffed to this thing, right? And I think that's why you see a surge in M&A. It's because some people just are tapping out and other folks are seeing the opportunity. I don't think it's greed. I think it's opportunity. But getting back to the sense of apathy, getting back to that, it's people want to feel like what they do matters, and in a lot of ways, it doesn't feel that way right now. It feels like we're just putting out another website. We get excited because we're building agents in AI. We're poking the future, and it's poking back, right? And so that's really cool. But a lot of people can do that, and it's not agency specific. Clients are doing it, right? So now clients are smarter, and they don't necessarily want us to tell them what they can do. They want us to be that external voice that tells them what they should do.
Yeah.
So we have to get really smart on things that we may not be in love with.
That makes sense. One thing I've been thinking about lately is this anecdote from like Munger and Buffett, where they're talking about owning a textile factory. Do you know this one by chance?
No.
I don't know what year this was. Maybe it was the 60s or 70s or something, but they owned a textile factory, and the manager came to Buffett, I think it was, and said, hey, there's this new textile invention, this new thing that's going to bring down costs by this much, and it's very exciting. We should get on board with it. And Buffett's immediate response was, I hope this does not work, because if it does, I'm going to have to close the factory, right? Because what he knew was they're already working on razor thin margins, and you have to keep investing in this stuff that amortizes and pays off in years. And he knew that the money would flow through the P&L from the supplier to the end customer, basically. So
Wow.
I hate going doom and gloom, because there are lots of things I'm optimistic about with AI, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Like, where do you think, like, how much of that is something to sort of be sober about and look at with AI versus areas where agencies really have an advantage in using it, if that makes sense?
I'm not sure I got the question. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm all over the place. Let me just rephrase it. You mentioned earlier that you're working with lots of agencies that are ahead of the curve with it, right? Can you talk more about like what are they doing and what are you seeing out there?
They're experimenting, right? Like I'll say that we always have to look at the search engine shops, the search shops, to guide us. Because the people who run those shops, they love solving problems and they're good at math, right? So Will Reynolds at Sear, or Dale Bertrand at Fire and Spark, Mike King at iPullRank, they are leading the charge on what AI can and should do and how it impacts us. There's a great agency called E2M. It's a white label shop, which I think we got to realize white label is a thing, just like offshore, nearshore. It's like, it's okay. We need to partner with folks, right? And sometimes those folks, all they do is partner and they call themselves white label, but they know which model of which version of which product is the best at this task. For example, if you're doing geography, it's ChatGPT 3, which you can't get to anymore. It was just better at geography, right? So they understand that. They're also experimenting with how do you get results into an AI search, right? And they're finding these trends. How do you best keep AI from hallucinating? How do you build agents that are going to break? They're going to break. But how do you build them to be resilient so that you can get back in there and fix them quickly? So these are the things they're doing. They're not just, I'll say JP Holika. He's doing crazy cool stuff at PowerShifter with in terms of video production, in terms of photo production, in terms of that kind of output. But I don't think it's just about what we create. I think the great shops are also shifting their operations. They're shifting their project management. They're shifting their biz dev. Everybody is coming in. I think a great example of this is Larry Waddell. Larry Waddell was also at Sear. He was in charge of sales for a while, and he took all of these different pitch decks they had, put them all into a private GPT. And when they got a new client, they had something like 300 case studies, 400 case studies. And they would ask chat, hey, these are the goals of the new client. Which case studies should we show? And sometimes it would bring up this case study that made no sense. It would say, tell me why I should use this case study. And they'd say, because even though the creation of it, the output of it has nothing to do with what they said, it was a similar goal. And you can show the results. Even though it's completely over here, you can show those results. They started using case studies they had never used. Because as humans, we fall into that muscle memory. Oh, I know this one. Oh, I can share this one, right? It was expanding them as salespeople to understand they had other things that were relevant. And as a result of that, they kept growing, right? They had downturns because of the economy, downturns because of all that stuff, but they didn't have downturns because they sat still. They didn't have downturns because they didn't use the tools that were available to them. And these are tools. I mean, we all say it, right? Some are toys for sure. But that to me is what the shops that are really leading are doing. They are going AI in everything they can. And there are also some AI first agencies starting to show up. One of the things that worried me about creative services is the average age of a founder is going up and up and up. You don't see many young founders. The youngest founders in the bureau are in their mid-30s. Right? A majority are in their late 40s to mid 50s. I'm 58, right? So not restocking that way. And then what I realized was they're there. They just don't call themselves agencies. And they don't think of themselves in that way. They think of themselves as an extension of the client. They don't think of themselves as a separate entity that is building something and the client better respect me, right? It's more that I'm with the client. We are partnering at true partnership level. And so as a result of that, they just don't use the terms we use.
That's interesting. There's a few things to jump off with there. Let's start with that. I guess what are they calling themselves then? If you're, whatever, a 20, 30 something year old founder, like and you would have started an agency 10 years ago, like what are you calling it now?
I really can't find a category. And I'll say this is based on a handful, like 6 or 7. But they call themselves a cool name, right? Like we all did. Color martial art, right? Purple Ninja. But they basically just create, they normally start off as freelancers. Then they get a few people around them, kind of an origin of a lot of agencies. But the main thing is they go hyper specialized on one thing. They are really one-trick ponies, but it's a trick everybody seems to need in some industry. And then they get pulled in and they do that repeatedly and they get shared around. It's almost like they are their own product versus they are here to listen and take your goals. No, you plug them in and they do the thing. One example is there's a group up in Montreal. I'm blocking on the name right now, but we met them and they're all in their late teens, early 20s. They're creating these amazing AI videos for product companies, and they think of themselves as brand influencers. They're an agency, right? What they do, their process, all of that, they're an agency, but they call themselves brand influencers. And so they are trying to get 3 million views on a TikTok video for their brand, their client. So I think that's it. They are like hyper specialized. They do one thing, they do it extremely well. And I think that becomes the future of agencies too.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's kind of double click on that future of agencies. I think you've talked about how it resembling a guild more, and this probably ties into the white label kind of partnership stuff you were talking about. Can you elaborate on that a little bit and what you're seeing in the bureau?
Yeah, so a lot of this is me projecting, right? But I do see shops wanting to get smaller. It feels more stable. There are shops that are doing well and they're growing, but I don't think growth anymore is just about the number of people, right? I think growth is about the capabilities. Growth is about the level of expertise. Growth is about what you can charge. But I don't know that growth should even be the goal right now. I think it should be sustainability, right? Or just stability. And so we have to steady the ship so that we can find another shore. And we're not there yet. So for me, I do see agencies getting smaller. I think somewhere in the 8 to 12 range, like when I kind of broke it out once in a post, and I got a book I'm working on, which along with that bio is like the weirdest thing to say. But what I see is these agencies becoming hyper specialized. They're extremely smart in a domain. They are really good at 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe things that they can output and create. They partner with other shops that are like them, but have a different skill set. And they all become part of the client's internal team, right? We get plugged in. We don't think about projects anymore. We think about progress, right? So we are helping the client move forward. I think we have dashboards with shared KPIs. I think we get paid based on accountability. Like if the client messes up, that shouldn't cost us. If we mess up, it shouldn't cost the client. It should all be a learning process because there's a lot of things to figure out and clients don't want to do it on their own. They don't trust their own people, right? So many times we would get hired when I knew the client had an in-house team and I would say, can I talk to your in-house team? I just want to understand why you're talking to us. And they're like, they don't know how to do this stuff. You know why they don't know how to do this stuff? Because you don't let them go to the events. You don't let them learn. You flog them within inches of their lives. They get frustrated. What do? They go spin up a shop because they want to learn. So for me, it becomes in-house and we're like plugins. We're like turbo packs that like go in to get them moving faster and to be a voice of responsibility because they need that external perspective that they're not going to get on the inside. I think time and materials does go away, which breaks my heart. That was like one of my models that I loved. I think value-based is kind of there, but I think it's truly about accountability. It's about, you were going to move the needle. Did you move the needle? Okay. And it's across all of these different things on a shared dashboard with shared KPIs. And that's how we do it. Yeah.
That makes sense. And I think that one thing that's sort of interesting about that is that like really blurs the lines of what an agency is, right? Because like if you now have to move the needle, maybe you're educating, an internal team more. Maybe there's curriculum work where you're teaching an internal team how to do some aspect of what you do as opposed to just doing it for them. And this is where you see, agencies kind of becoming blurry with whatever it is, publishers, consultancies, training organizations.
Yeah.
Have you seen any, assuming you agree with me, you don't have to, have you seen any steps in that direction from the agencies you're working with?
That's a great question. I don't really think so. I will say that one of the things I'm interested in is to see, as everything evolves, do we still have that sense of poaching? Do we still have that sense of, if a team member decides they really love the product and they want to become part of the in-house team, is that a big deal? Right? Or if somebody on the in-house team falls in love with the shop and they want to leave with the shop, it almost feels like we're becoming organisms in a way, right? And we're going to exchange things. But in terms of agencies and what they're doing now, we're in that early phase. Everybody's doing everything just a little bit different. But what I love about the Bureau is they're all sharing what they're doing and collectively learning about what's working and what didn't work. And one of the things I always try to stress is shop A's context is not the same as shop B's context. So if shop A tries something that says it didn't work, that doesn't mean it won't work over here.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that took me a long term to learn. I have done so many great things and so many horrible things in terms of how I ran my business. And I was convinced that all the lessons I learned on what doesn't work just doesn't work. It's 20 years ago, dude. Right. And the other thing is, it was how I applied it. So I think there's so much opportunity for us to evolve that the most important thing we can do is be open and communicate and share relentlessly, share recklessly what we're doing. I think the idea of holding on to any kind of industry secrets or, any kind of, I can't find the word right now, but just any kind of intellectual property, that feels like it's just going to hurt us all.
Yeah, I tend to agree. That was resonating with me a lot because, like, one thing that I'll give an example of the XYZ works, XYZ doesn't work, is like we're in the biz dev space, and a lot of the lessons that we see being taught on LinkedIn work for a large market. Like if you're selling to SMBs, right, and we can just like play these scale games all day. When you're talking about like I'm selling to this very specialized group of companies and people that could fit into a high school gym, you're kind of playing a different game, right? And like there isn't enough on the ladder, I think, for lots of agencies. Right. Regarding sharing, I love this topic too, because like I think we've trended towards sharing more. At the same time, I've been hesitant to share when things are going really badly, or like, and same with our clients, like, are you, people are, I think, understandably scared. Like, are you going to create a bad taste in people's mouths if they're a potential client or a prospect? How have you sort of managed that, and how do you kind of deal with that problem?
Again, I'm trying to get the question. I'm sorry. So
sharing versus oversharing, right? So like
sharing versus oversharing. Yeah, absolutely. So there's transparency and there is oversharing. I will say in the Bureau community, people are very transparent about how they're doing if they're doing poorly, but they don't share if they're doing well because they don't want people to feel bad, right? And that always breaks my heart because they need that sense of hope. But I think with clients, I think with your team, I think with everybody, you need to share within the context they can understand. Oversharing to me is basically when you just keep going and explaining things that don't really make a difference, right? It feels good to you to get it out, but where does it leave the rest of the group? Whereas transparency is saying, this is where we are. This is how we got here. This is where we want to go from here, right? And it could be, this is where we are and we don't have enough for everyone. So we're going to see what the options are. But if you don't tell people what's really going on, they make up the story. We all know it. And they make up a much worse story than what reality is. And I think Nancy Lyons said it. She's a clockwork in Minneapolis. The speed of good news or the speed of bad news needs to travel at the same speed of good news. It's just news.
Yeah.
Right. And so that becomes a big thing for me. We used to, way back when, like mid 2000s, we would have clients that would start to act differently. And I would always call. I would say, let's have a meeting. We would sit down, and the number one thing on the agenda would be based on whatever the issue was. One time we were meeting with this group called Short Flicks, and they had gotten weird and started asking us about their business model. And the first issue was trust issues. And they were like, what? And I was like, I don't know. We were chugging along, and it felt like we loved each other. And then one day y'all asked us some weird questions, and things got weird. They didn't get their second round of funding. but they didn't want to tell us because they wanted us to keep working.
Yeah.
So I think if I'm getting it right, I think the difference between oversharing and transparency is, one, transparency helps you move forward with everybody feeling knowledgeable and understanding what is going on with the ambience here. Like, I understand what's around me. And then oversharing is just dumping.
Right.
Right. And you get the key nugget that you need, but then you just throw a bunch of shit on it for the other person. Right. And then they may even forget what the nugget was because they're just like spinning in all the stuff that got shared, or they tuned out because they were like, I don't know what he's talking about. And I'm a chronic overshare.
That's helpful. And sometimes it's a balancing act where you have to be specific enough to make it feel real, but not so specific that everybody discounts themselves. So that's helpful. To shift gears a little bit, I know you guys had a big biz dev conference, I think in New Orleans in February, I want to say.
Yeah.
Let's talk about biz dev. Like, what's working, what's not? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah. So with biz dev, what I'm seeing is it's longer sales cycles. It seems like for no reason at all, the pipelines will all thaw out at the same time. We have one channel for biz dev folks, and they always will post whale gifs when they won something big. Sometimes they post bass gifs, and sometimes they post little tadpole gifs, but they just post when they're winning, right? And they come in waves. So I think that's a big part of it. And I think part of that's got to do with the economy. I think clients understand this. I think some agencies understand this. We can't become complacent. We can't sit still. If we wait for things to get back to normal, we're going to miss what is normal, right? We're going to get crushed. So when I think about that, it's really the agencies that are super honest and share how they're going to use AI, if they're going to use AI, what they think the best options are for the client, what they think might change 6 months, a year from now. But they explain what they do know and what they don't know. And they build trust with that. Also, I think they're really familiar. They don't use a lot of terms that clients don't understand, right? Even as clients get savvier, we have our own language. And I think trust is based on being familiar. So if I understand what a keyboard is, okay, I know how to use this device. But if it's some weird alien thing, I'm like, I'm not even going to try. So I think that's what you see is like the biz dev folks who are not pushy, but are genuine and take the time to learn the client's business and share what they think their business can do in this new environment of work and almost offer to be a guide. They're the ones that are still bringing in work right now. That's what I see. I will say, I don't think there's a long runway for generalists, but they do have some advantages in that they can eat enough small meals to get full. But the specialists and the hyper specialists, they're the ones that if they can find the right lane, they're just flooded. They just get it all. So it's a little all over the place, much like my answer. But that's really what I'm seeing. It's a persistence, but it's a pleasant persistence. They're not annoying. They're not trying to slam things. I don't know where retainers go. Right now, they're still working, but I think that becomes a little bit of an artifact as well in the long term.
Yeah, that's interesting. Let's double click on that. Why do you think that is with retainers?
Because I think retainers, what we might call them something different. I think retainers are based on a scope of work, a certain area that you're going to play, and you don't go outside of that area. And I think where we're going to be 5 years from now is we're bringing in the areas that the client needs to go to because we're not so enthralled in the larger organization that we can't see what's happening. So in a way, we're almost like they're explorers who are out there saying, this is the new thing, let's do that. You can't really fit that cleanly. Maybe you could into a scope of work. So for me, it's like this idea of a retainer where you get a certain number of hours for a month. I think it's a certain amount of progress per month. If it took 2 hours or it took 200, or you just happen to know off the top of your head, that's a thing we can do. That's progress. And that's what we need to get compensated for, not effort. So, and I think of retainers as putting in a certain amount of effort.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's also kind of a different dynamic with retainers where it's like client says jump, you say how high kind of thing. It's like I have you on retainer versus like here are the things we're going to do. Here's what's going to happen. Here's what's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's more like a leash, right?
Yeah.
You're getting put on a leash, and and we had some great ones. We had a retainer with Epic Games that was great, but the team would also burn out. So I think there's a care and feeding aspect for the team where retainers can be so repetitive with work that doesn't evolve. Whereas I think the future is we're the ones helping to evolve the work for the client. So it's really exciting. You get to be on the front lines and you get to experiment and try new things and say, this just got released. Let's see what it can do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another thing you mentioned is sales cycles getting longer. Definitely seeing this everywhere because we're also getting a lot of data on it. What do you think is behind that? And the agencies that are dealing with this problem well, whether they're shortening sales cycles or just settling in for a longer sales cycle, like what are they doing differently, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I think the sales cycle is taking longer because clients are nervous. Honestly, they're like, okay, I know we need to do this. Okay, this is the amount of money it's going to cost, but we do have expenses, and this is $200,000. And if I committed to this, then I have to figure out other things. So I think it's analysis paralysis. I think it's fear. I think it's just the nature of where we are right now. But the agencies, and there are some who are getting things moving a little bit faster. I think they do incentivize a little bit. I don't want to say they guarantee anything, but I think they feel less risky. I think they give a more sense of calm to the client. And their clients are a little bit different. A lot of the things clogging pipelines are big corporate, right? Your small, your medium businesses that have to keep moving to survive, they seem to be approving things faster, right? Still slower than they used to. But, and I tell people, I'm like, sometimes you need to realize you may need to shift your focus on who you're working with, right? And if you want to say generalist, you can still have the same industry, or you can still have the same technology, although I'd never pair up with a technology. I think there's a lot of danger in that. But ultimately, you have to find a stable place. And that might not be the big corporate or finance or, healthcare or whatever. Because if you go back and you look at the beginning of the pandemic, right? I knew shops that were so heavy into hospitality, so heavy into travel, so heavy into these other aspects, and they were crushing until one day it just got turned off, right? And a couple of them shifted to healthcare and higher ed because suddenly that was the belle of the ball, right? And government too. And those did really well. Others waited on it to come back. And some of them aren't here anymore. They just decided, I'm going to turn off the light. I can't do it.
Yeah.
But again, flexibility and adaptability.
Right. That's part of it. And that risk is being taken, whether you know you're taking it or not, I guess. Right. So
yeah, it's a risk either way.
Yeah. That makes sense. No, this has been great, Carl. I guess what if I not ask you in another way, another option B to that question is what would you like to leave agencies with?
Where would I like to?
What would you like to leave people with? Is there anything that I haven't asked you yet?
Yeah, I would say keep your chin up. Be hopeful. Realize we're still humans, right? And know that we're all going through stuff. We're all trying to figure it out, but you're not alone. And there are other people trying to do what you're doing. And if you can find your people, and you can share with them and you can help them and you're able to do that week after week, things get easier. So if nothing else, try to find people you may have thought of as competitors and say, you want to grab a coffee? I think you'll find your life gets a lot better.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to that. That's huge. Carl, this has been so much fun, man. I learned a lot. Where can people go to learn about the Bureau and all the other stuff you're up to?
Yeah, if you go to thebureau.community, you can find us there. That's our new home with our new site that I'm so excited about. And you can also follow me on LinkedIn. If you search Carl Smith Bureau, I should pop up. And I'm happy to talk to almost anybody. It's like there are very few people, and they were in 5th grade, so I doubt you're one of them. So yeah, if you have anything at all that I can help with, please reach out. I'll see what I can do.
Awesome. Thanks again, Carl. Really appreciate it.
You got it. Thanks, Dan.